I would like to introduce Jeff Mixter. He is at OCLC and he will be leading our virtual booth today. Take it away, Jeff.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the LD4 OCLC virtual booth. I have quite a few options available in terms of what we could do today. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Kirk Hess as well as Ann Washington. We could just do a round robin answer questions about linked data or some of OCLC's linked data offerings. I do have a presentation queued up that just sort of goes over recent work that we've been doing in the area of linked data over the past year or so. We also, because we are joined with Ann Washington, we could also just we could do a demo of WorldCat entities or Meridian or some of the APIs associated with that. I didn't want to make assumptions about what folks would be interested in for the virtual booth, but we do have quite a few options available. And I don't know, Mary, whether folks are able to unmute themselves. But if you're able to, please feel free to unmute and chime in about what you'd be interested in viewing or seeing or talking about.
Folks should be able to unmute themselves, so please do so as you like. And if you do have any issues with unmuting, please let me know in the chat and I will happily troubleshoot.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. Uh, I just have a little question, I guess. I noticed something in a MARC record in preparing a presentation we did yesterday. And it's a fast subject heading that is identified in subfield 2 as fast, but the subfield 1, I believe, contained the WorldCat entity IRI, not the fast. Okay. The subfield 0 contained the identifier for the fast. Is that going to be a pattern that we see?
Yes, it will be. For fast facets that are personal names, corporate names, events, or geographic heading.
Geographic, yes.
Those, because they could have a corresponding WorldCat entity identifier. The reliable pattern that you'll always see across WorldCat records will be obviously the subfield A with whatever the fast heading is, the subfield 0 with the fast identifier, and then where applicable, a subfield 1 with the corresponding WorldCat entity identifier. And what that sort of symbolizes is the sort of the not to get into the details, the real world objectness of the thing, but also symbolizes that WorldCat entity is connected to that
Connected.
fast topical heading.
Thank you. That's very
Welcome.
clear. Thank you.
Jeff, can I ask a follow-up question about that?
Sure, yeah.
Is there a
And
reason?
to you next, Mackenzie. I see you have your hands up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
No
jump
worries.
ahead. Is there a reason in the subfield zeros why you're still using just um, identifiers instead of URIs for the fast URI?
Yes, yeah, great question. We have been talking about that, Adam, with some of our internal folks, and it's just right now it's just a policy and sort of a procedural way we add it. That's not to say we aren't open to changing it to be the actual URI for the fast heading as opposed to just the control number. But right now that's just the pattern we have, and we want to just be careful about changing that just because that pattern has been in place for so long. We don't want to disrupt anyone who has systems or code or pipelines that are expecting that specific pattern in the subfield 0 when they're processing WorldCat data. Mackenzie?
Hi. Thank you. Oh yeah, I should just turn my camera here too. Oh, there we go. So I have a question about the WorldCat entities terms and conditions. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Recognize that y'all are not legal, but um, particularly like uh, looking surrounding like the license, how it has this DC by NC license, and then all these further extra restrictions on it and scraping and all that jazz. I understand the rationale. Uh, I'm sort of curious, like why apply a CC license of any kind to the entities if there's going to be these further restrictions on it that even like, at least in my view at least they may not they may be, aligned with at least the letter of the legal code, but at least to me it feels it sort of flies in the face of some of what Creative Commons, you know, the Creative Commons as like a value sort of thing. So if you have any anything to speak to about that, I'm curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So with regards to starting with the scraping, the harvesting, yeah, that's
Hmm.
really to help protect the infrastructure from bot harvesting.
Yeah,
So there's obviously certainly with the rise of AI, there's a lot of concern around the web of AI agents or whatever is going off and mass harvesting data. So it's to protect the reliability. For the first off, is to protect the reliability
okay.
and make sure that the data and the systems are usable by people who are trying to correctly use the data. Um, with regards to some of the other comments or other sections, and there's not retaining the data.
Yep.
It's basically so that that's designed to allow libraries who want to download WorldCat entities data and store it in their local system to do data processing, to enhance discovery experiences, to build knowledge cards, to do other linked data discovery experiences within their systems. That's what that is allowed. We want to promote and allow people to do that, but we want to make sure it's not done in a way that sort of wholesale copies of the data are being downloaded and then made available outside of the WorldCat entities data ecosystem. So in terms of not coming directly from the WorldCat entities data. So that clause is actually designed to help reinforce what is allowed and promote data use, while at the same time, again, protect it from sort of AI harvesting or bot harvesting in general.
Yeah. Okay. That I mean, like I say, I mean, I read those restrictions like this make I can understand why OCLC put those terms in place in terms of yes, protecting the infrastructure y'all have made. Um, yeah, I don't know, like I say, not a lawyer. Particularly that bit about the retention is still something that I'm trying to sort of parse how that gels with some of the terms about like the collective works term in the Creative Com in like the CC license uh content. But uh yeah, I mean thank you for the answer you did have. I like again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if I necessarily want to hash this out too much apart from just sort of asking and sort of highlighting it as something that was like maybe tilt my head and go, huh. But
Yeah,
yeah.
what we can do is if Mackenzie, if you do have any further questions, we've had this conversation with a lot of folks who are
Okay.
curious about this. So you certainly feel free. I'll make sure to include my email in the chat here. And if you have any specific questions about reusing the data, you can always feel free to reach out to myself or someone on our team, and we can go over the specific use case and see what's going on there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So I did see a suggestion in the chat, I believe, about maybe starting out with a presentation and then turning things over to Ann Washington to do a sort of overview demo of entities in Meridian. I will quickly do that. And if I could ask, and if you could make sure that I don't just keep on rambling through this presentation, because I have a tendency to do that. Let's try to make sure we have maybe 30 minutes or so. So I'll try to spend the next 15, 20 minutes on a presentation. Then that gives you 30 minutes to do a demo and answer any questions that might come up. You are muted, Anne.
I didn't realize we had an hour, so that's great. Yeah. And well, okay. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to jump in here. There are some all right, excellent. Okay, so folks can see this now. All right. Excellent. Great. All right. So what I thought we could do is quickly go over some of the linked data work that we've been doing here at OCLC over the past couple of years. Talk about how we've been taking that data and integrating it into existing WorldCat data and existing cataloging workflows. And then lastly, talk about some of the new tools and services around this linked data that we've been developing and sharing. So to start out with the data, um, one that probably all folks are familiar with, I think there's a presentation on it earlier by some folks from University of Divinity, is the WorldCat entities data. So WorldCat entities is a set of linked data descriptions for persons, places, events, organizations, and broadly speaking, works. Um, I think Anne will be showing this, but you can freely view and explore the data at entities.oclc.org. The way we've been looking at this data is it forms a connective hub across WorldCat data, or in general. So it can help start to bridge authorities with real world objects. And because WorldCat entities is a knowledge graph, it can also be used to start connecting across entities. Hugh and Amy were talking about this in that presentation earlier today, is being able to sort of visualize and navigate the graph for interesting knowledge exploration. So just by the numbers, WorldCat entities has just over 150 million entities in it. And it's really designed to help explore relationships and connections that Hugh was talking about earlier in his prototype, and also help empower discovery through using the data and the connections to do interesting things like build knowledge cards or help suggest other people or entities that someone might be interested in based on a known or found item in a discovery system. Um, because I was an engineer in a former life, I can't do a linked data presentation without showing data. So this is just a snippet of some WorldCat entities linked data. This happens to be for the person, Ken Burns. Um, and the things I do want to highlight here are we spent a lot of time working with the community and reading about and following norms and best practices for publishing linked data. So our primary serialization is JSON LD, and the way we've crafted it is to make it as developer friendly as possible. So if you do sort of know anything about JSON and you look at this, this is very user friendly. And we really tried to design the way the data is serialized or published to be in a format or a structure that an engineer or a developer doesn't really need to know what linked data is in order to use this data here. So I think that's a really valuable opportunity for using this data is its developer friendliness. Um, and then you can also see things like the multiple language supports using the BCP 47 language codes. So things that are just inherent to linked data that are important when trying to build and use that data in something like a discovery system. Another set of data that we recently published was Dewey linked data. So we were able to take established Dewey classification numbers and publish them as linked data. So similar to the WorldCat entities linked data, Dewey is really forming the basis of conceptual or classification linked data that we're going to start to publish across the WorldCat ecosystem and hope that others can use in other systems. I actually just saw a really interesting, sort of very quick snippet of a library in Greece who integrated this Dewey linked data and API into Koa as an auto suggest. So when they were doing cataloging in Koa, they could have a Dewey number, and then that Dewey number would call lookup service to Dewey linked data and look for the URI that could then be added in a subfield one automatically during the cataloging process. So this sort of speaks to the next section, but it really emphasizes the way we would like to see linked data integrated into existing workflows to sort of help lower the barrier to entry and also help bridge the gap between sort of a MARC-centric record view of the world and a more connected graph view of the world or a linked data view of the world. Also to note, in addition to just publishing the Dewey link data, we also connected the Dewey classifications to fast topical headings. So I think we have an example of that here in a minute. But one of the immediate values of this Dewey linked data is you now have human readable labels for Dewey headings. And anecdotally, I remember as a young child, and it just sort of demonstrates why I find this really cool. When I was a child, I used to go to our public library after school, like every day, just because I like to read a lot. And I remember distinctly the sort of the ubiquitous slip of paper and pencil that all of the terminals had at them. That when you sort of found a book, you would like write down this weird number. And I never knew what that number meant at the time. And every so often I'd go up to the librarian or a librarian would walk by and ask if I needed help. And I'd say, well, I mean, what does this number mean? And they would kind of look at me, and most of the time they'd say, I don't really know, but it's where the book is. So just kind of walk down the shelves until you see that number. And then if you walk down that shelf, you'll find the specific number, and that's where your book's going to be. After having gone through library school, I learned that those numbers are actually Dewey classifications that actually do have notes and human readable labels associated with them. So again, sort of tying back to Dewey linked data, I think that being able to produce Dewey data in multiple languages and with human readable context for them could be really, really important in terms of the way people can start to interact and use Dewey in their discovery systems outside of it just go to the shelf and that's where you'll find the resource you're looking for. So again, here's a snippet of the Dewey link data. Like with WorldCat entities data, it follows the principles of make the data as easy to use as possible. So you can see again the labels here across the 6 translations of Dewey. Additional translations are in the works right now, and as those translations are published, that data will just flow immediately into the Dewey linked data. So I believe an Arabic translation is being worked on right now, as well as a Spanish translation of Dewey. But what's interesting here is you can see here that related match to a fast topical heading. But what's also very interesting are these related Dewey classifications. And again, going back to how can we use this data, what these are relationships to other Dewey classifications that this one, in this case, the classification for machine readable record formats, MARC, is related to. And what's interesting about this is I think it really starts to get at the notion of sort of serendipitous discovery that I think people have like, what does that mean? It's of interest. How do we implement that? What's the there for it? Is it even real? But what these relationships allow you to do is potentially prompt or inform a information seek a page or library patron that you have this book that you found on this shelf and you know it because you found it in the OPAC. If you walk 30 shelves down that away, there is another shelf that has resources, at least a resource on it, that is related to the one you have in your hand. And it's not semantic enough to tell you what the relationship is, but I think what's really valuable is that it can make the connection to allow the patron or the information seeker sort of intuitively follow these relationships to find new and interesting things in unexpected places. And I think that really gets to the one of the key values of linked data and data within a graph. So I can also talk briefly about some of the work we're doing with BibFrame. Kirk Hess is also on the call, so he can certainly chime in if there are any BibFrame related questions. We've been working very closely with LC on their ongoing development of BibFrame. We also are an active participant in the PCC's BibFrame Interoperability Group, also known as BIG, which is helping evaluate how BibFrame data can be exchanged and interchanged the same way we would do with MARC today. And lastly, we have been analyzing and evaluating WorldCat data converted to BibFrame at scale to see what patterns do we find, what anti-patterns do we see based on the MARC to BibFrame conversions, and how can we help normalize those to make the data more usable. And also just general analysis on how many identifiers are there once you've converted a MARC record to BibFrame, because identifiers and linked data are kind of the critical connection points between resources in a graph. And out of all this work, we've identified some challenges. And the biggest challenge is that sort of the heterogeneous and at times idiosyncratic BibFrame data based on sort of heterogeneous and idiosyncratic MARC data decreases the reusability of the data at scale and can also compromise interoperability. And that these issues are compounded by the sort of open world paradigm that is RDF. So to help with this, we are working to create a highly reliable, consistent, and again, developer-friendly set of BibFrame data that can be used to help build next generation discovery systems, OPAC systems, LSP systems, things like that. So right now, OCLC can ingest BibFrame data into WorldCat. We've been testing both with Library of Congress as well as libraries that are starting to manage BibFrame data in their library systems. And we've been able to share that feedback back to both the Library of Congress as well as library vendors. And we've also been using this to help expand the mappings that we have between BibFrame and MARC, and conversely, between MARC and BibFrame when evaluating export, which we're also in the process of doing right now. So ultimately, what we want is that this data becomes sort of a part of an ever-growing ecosystem. So integrated both with library-specific data sets like Dewey or BibFrame or FAST, library-adjacent data sets like ORCID or ISNI, as well as sort of library-agnostic or general-purpose linked data sets like Wikidata. So now I want to really briefly talk about, so what have we been doing with this data? And one thing we have been doing and are continuing to do is adding these WorldCat entity URIs into MARC records. Laura, you mentioned that question earlier about a fast heading that had a WorldCat entity subfield 1 identifier. Yes, we've been doing that. And actually, this is a good example as to why I think this is of value or of importance. So this is a sample WorldCat record that was written by a person by the name of Eric Sevareid, but is also about Eric Sevareid and also about World War II. And the background is Eric Sevareid was a war correspondent during World War II, and then wrote an autobiography about his experience as a journalist during World War II. And what I think is interesting here is this 100 field controlled heading is actually not the same as this 600 field controlled heading. So the 600 is from FAST, as you can see in the data, but the 100 is actually a Library of Congress authority heading. And so that means both of these actually have different identifiers for them. In terms of the first one would have a Library of Congress identifier, and the second would have a FAST identifier. But what we've been able to do by adding the WorldCat entity identifiers here is connect these two together. These are indeed the same Eric Severide, even though they came from different control vocabularies. And there's obviously other ways one can do this, but the fact that it's sort of minted directly into the MARC record makes it very convenient to be able to identify that these are indeed the same person.
Hey, Jeff, it's 12:27. Just
Excellent. Thank
FYI.
you, Anne. Thank you for keeping me honest. I will be wrapping up here in just a second. So to date, we've added over 400 million of these identifiers to WorldCat records. We also are in the process of adding DUI link data to WorldCat records in the newly approved subfield 1 usage in the 082 field. How can we get these linked data identifiers? Basically, any way one would get a MARC record out of WorldCat, those identifiers, those WorldCat entity identifiers, and those DUI linked data identifiers will be in the data. So these are sort of just the common ways people access data out of WorldCat, and any of these ways will bring back or bring out those connected WorldCat entity identifiers. Um, so what's next? Really quick. We're starting to now integrate these WorldCat entity linked identifiers into discovery systems. So this is sort of a mock-up of how we envision adding it to WorldCat Discovery. We have similar work we're doing across worldcat.org that you can actually see today. But we really want to start now that we have the data, we've integrated it into existing data and into existing workflows. We want to now prove and demonstrate the value of that linked data by adding it to discovery systems for people to actually start using and interacting with. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And I will make sure that the presentation is shared after the fact, since we did indeed have a presentation today. And now I'll turn things over to Ann Washington.
Awesome. So I will show Meridian in action, and then if folks have questions while I'm going or follow-ups for Jeff, you can put them in the chat, but I'm going to try and save some time for questions too. All right, let me see if sharing my screen will cooperate. Okay, so early in the presentation, Jeff talked about the WorldCat entities. And so that's available at entities.oclc.org. I've actually logged in already to Meridian, and that's the application that allows users to create and edit entities. And then I'll also quickly show some of the APIs, or at least a couple ways that you can get at entity data. If you want to do, or if you're inspired by Hugh and Amy's presentation, and want to take a look at what we have available. So here you can search for an entity. This is actually the person that I'm going to add. But on any of these pages, if you're in WorldCat entities, you won't see this edit tab. But well, let's just get out of here so you can see it. So if you're at WorldCat entities, entities.oclc.org, you'll see this entity data. And then if you, when you sign in with either a worldcat.org account or an existing WorldShare account, so if you use something like Record Manager or some other kind of application or feature in the WorldShare, and you're used to logging in here with your institution symbol, you can do that to view the references and history of the entities. I'm logging in this way, so it kind of takes me through my whole authentication thing, which I'm sure some of you have to do as well. And so once you've logged in, again, you can use that a WorldCat account or a WorldShare account. You won't see this edit actions. You won't see some of these things, but you'll see the references tab. So on view, you'll see all of the entity data. Once you log in, you can see all of these linked data identifiers and all of this data. The references tab has essentially citations to some of these different properties. So, where did we get this information that I was born sometimes in the 80s? Be off. Where did we, see that place of birth is Milwaukee County? Wikidata. So this is really helpful, I think, for providing some provenance for some of those claims or properties. And then in the history tab, it shows what institution made a change. So Meridian subscribers, as they make changes to the data, you'll see the registry ID, which you can click on here. It's currently not the OCLC symbol. Instead, it's the registry ID, but often, will correspond to a symbol. So now that I've logged into Meridian, we see a few other things. So I'll show that we have this quality score. Very quickly, this is not a pass or fail, but it does give some sense of how much information is available and what properties we might consider this fully disambiguated. So that is to get at, hey, this and Washington, do we think it has enough information that someone could tell this and Washington from another? And then a measure of completeness of, how many properties are filled out. Now, as we know, in the context of creating and working with authoritative data, privacy is super important. So again, this is not necessarily to mean that you would enter an encyclopedic description or that, if your entity, the entity you're creating has a 45, it's bad. It's, again, just sort of like a measure to use as you're assessing entities that you might be working with. And then we have an actions menu, and for users, this can be used to flag a duplicate. So I have an example in here still that just to kind of demonstrate this, but you could flag an entity as a duplicate. We found 2 Toni Morrisons. One has quality score of 56. The other is 0. This one is because I've done that, but let's say maybe it's like 10 or something like that. I can say, hey, I prefer, like, this is the best one. Let's keep this. I know these are duplicates. This is the better one. I think this one should be deleted. You can use this actions menu, and there's something that says request to delete entity. You can add an ID for the entity that should survive. And then it has this flag and goes to our quality team to review and merge. Importantly, the IDs that we have are persistent. So this will redirect to the surviving entity. And then on the machine readable side of things, that's managed as well. So edit, you'll notice, is a lot like create. So I'll go ahead and create something real quick just to show you. I'm not sure if what I do will flag as a duplicate, but I just want to mention that there's another way that we can, this is one way that we're ensuring some quality or working towards that. If you add an entity that looks like it might be the same as an existing entity, you'll get this kind of duplicate screen. And it says, hey, it looks like, did you mean one of these folks? You can, select to say, no, this is actually new. Or you can say, oh, okay, actually, I meant to you know, I guess I'll just look at this and edit it. But let's go ahead and create something here. I've grabbed a person in the dance department of where I went to school, UW Milwaukee. And this is a person. And let's just see how, this is how this person describes himself. And then I don't see readily, oh, I haven't. So we could have had that as the label, but it looked, you know, like the top of that page, it was just Maria Gillespie. So I'll create this person. I already checked that this American nurse and nun was not that person, but you could actually open it in like a separate tab to say, okay, yeah, definitely it's not the same person. So I'm going to create new. And then this is here. This is already permanent. So if you wanted to create entities in your workflow kind of through Meridian, you could do it this way, or within Record Manager. Let me see if I can pull that up. Make sure this is the right thing. Okay. Oh, okay. That's fancy. Let's just pick something that I won't save to. So we really, as Jeff mentioned, want to meet folks kind of where they are in terms of what skills they want to pursue and what tools they're using. So let's just pick this. If you're working in Record Manager, and let's say we wanted to add another person. Oh, now we're going to get me with these fields here, but let's just say you had maybe an uncontrolled term. So maybe this is a person that you're not a NACO shop, but you still want to kind of keep track of your authors. Maybe this is a thesis author or a local photographer, something like that. You can actually create them from within Record Manager if you are a Meridian subscriber. So, you know, similar to what we just did there, I'm not going to add it, but this is similar to that form. Now, since we had it in a 100, it picks agent. You just enter some brief info here, and then you can create and insert URI. So it will stop you if you try to create the same person, and it'll ask that you go to the Meridian interface, just because we don't want to create duplicates from this form. But this is one way that you can kind of just do this as you're entering data. As a user of Record Manager or Connection, even if you don't have access to Meridian, you're welcome to use the Insert WorldCat entity. That toolkit just came out for Connection, but this would be if you, let's see if this will actually work. This one's already controlled, so there might be a challenge with that. But anyway, if you see an entity, you can right click on it. You can click insert WorldCat entity and it'll do a search. And then you could add that identifier. We have this hooked up to controlling. And so you might see as you're controlling things that those entities come in. We're also planning to do this kind of at scale. So you can add that for kind of completeness of your entry, and just know that we're also want to do this in ways that are at scale. From here, you can add all kinds of different information. not only could you add, say, a date of birth, but you could add an active start date. This is again in thinking about privacy. If we just want to indicate that, this person isn't the person that we saw previously from the 1884 or whatever, and we just want to, oh, I think I went away from that page, but we wanted to say that they were an active, once they graduated this college or when they started. But when I've been doing this for faculty members, it's like, what's their oldest article? You could use that info. One thing about some additional characteristics you can add for field of activity, let's say, we're doing dance. This is a lookup against FAST. And so this provides another connector between the FAST subjects that you would see in a bibliographic record. We have connections between FAST and Dewey, which help us create those connections. So right now, that's what vocabulary we're using here. But let's say, well, actually, let's say that one of those values wasn't available. Like, let's put like somatics in here. Okay. You can add this as text and then indicate the language. So we want you to be able to add your descriptors. This kind of happens a lot, or we could see it happening in our testing with like awards, because the awards in FAST are, which come from Library of Congress, are fairly limited, especially in internationally. So, you could add a French award or whatever you need to from here, and then add a reference URL where that makes sense. Now I see some questions coming in, so this was just sort of a zip through this. Let me see. Oh, okay, Jeff is putting into here. We can probably answer that. Iman, you mentioned if the labels for entities are the same or since the URIs are different, or do you add something to the label to differentiate? So this is where, oh, Jeff already said this. Yes, they can have the same label, but the intent is to differentiate, visually we could use the identifier, but also through some of this additional contextual information. You can also add values in other languages. So if we go back to Toni Morrison, this is a good example of showing how many languages this label is available in. And if we go to, I just want to show one more thing in kind of how we're integrating this across systems. If we have, let's see, Angela Davis, we have here, when you see this little person icon, this means that in that bibliographic record, we have one of our URIs. So anytime you add a URI or our processes add a URI, this will be included here. And you can see in worldcat.org, it comes up with the description. And then you could do some really precise searching with this as well. But I wanted to show that I am going to do some more scrolling, everybody, so hang on to your hats. Let's change this to Korean. And if we go to that same Angela Davis here, when you hover over this, you can see that label and description in Korean since that's available. So that's what you can do when we have these different language specified. You can make this accessible to more communities. I will say for WorldCat entities, data and Meridian, I'm liaising. I'm part of IMAC, PCC IMAC, and liaising with the WorldCat Entities Meridian MCO group, so the Entity Management Cooperative, which we're going to talk, I think Crystal and others, actually, I just looked at this. No, Kyla, Alex, and Susan are going to be talking about the Wikidata group in MCO. There is also a group in MCO for Meridian and entities. You don't have to subscribe to Meridian. We have folks also who are interested in using entities data. So they have the IDs in their metadata, and they want to be able to pull some contextual data from WorldCat entities. They have ideas about, hey, what am I looking for? What could I expect? Things like that. So feel free to join as part of that conversation. Let me link to the MCO page here. And you don't have to be a PCC member to join. The overall kind of vision of that group is evolving our thoughts around authority control or authoritative data in bibliographic data. And so kind of making it possible to add, in a standard-ish way, entities or values from other registries to bibliographic records. And so basically saying that's okay. You can, you may not have to make a NACO record. Now, we're not saying that right now, but we're seeing what it looks like to have other registries available for that. The focuses now are on, as I mentioned, WorldCat Entities Meridian, ISNI, and Wikidata, which is what folks are going to be talking about. And then let me share very quickly, have Postman up here. And so if you are working in an API client or otherwise want to get the linked data for a given entity, you can add the URI here and append JSON LD, and you'll get delivered. You can see this structured data. Now, for some additional data to be included, you can, if you have a WorldShare account and have worked in Dev Network before, you can request WorldCat entities data. And if folks need help doing that, I've written up an email. I can send that to you. If you do not currently have a WorldShare but are interested in getting data, also please get in touch with us. But for this, you would just add, so it's the same query. You just add your authorization in. And so you could get a token and you get a little bit more data here with some of those relationships. So this is one way that if you're looking to build onto this bibliographic data that comes into your systems as you build discovery experiences, or again, little graph apps, you can access this data. And then with Meridian, you have, of course, a read endpoint for reading entity data, searching. This lookup endpoint is really powerful in that it can help exchange IDs. So if you have a whole data set full of, VF IDs, because that's what you've been using in, say, your digital collections, you want to see if they exist in WorldCat entities to maybe make some connections between bibliographic data. You can use this PID lookup to, let's do this example because I know that it works. In this case, I have a WorldCat entity ID and I want the ORCID. And so I could complete that and then kind of grab that identifier here. So this is a really cool endpoint. And then as Jeff mentioned, if folks are using this in their applications, we've built the changes API according to a specification that Jeff will remember the name of and put it in the chat. And basically this tells you what changes are happening. So you can cache the data, kind of listen, set up a listener for some amount of time and determine what changes have happened to the data so that you can re-pull it. And let's see if I can run this. Here's an example where, this person entity had an update. This person entity had an update. This is a work, had an update. You would also see a create in here, things like that. And then some additional APIs we have, you can read about on our information pages, but connections, surfaces connections like, this person wrote about another person or wrote about a topic. So it's really connecting the data across entities, bibliographic data, things like that. And then we have a Sparkle endpoint as well. So that's again, a zip through all of that information. What questions do folks have? I mean, I see questions in the chat. Let's see. Laura, you asked a good question about if you want to create a NACO authority, but also an entity, would it be better to make the name of authority first? And are there interactions between the two systems? This is great feedback, and we have heard this from folks. So we are looking at ways to for Meridian users to make it easier to maybe create a NACO record, and we're finding ways to kind of streamline the process of perhaps enriching or adding data from that NACO process. So as Jeff mentioned, we'll kind of keep your eye out for more information from the, I want to say, Meridian page, which I can link here. There's a linked data listserv that you can, not listserv, mailing list that you can sign up for that has good information and will have any announcements like that, beyond what we might post to other channels as well. But it's a good way to kind of get sort of the latest as we go. So Jeff, it looks like you've actually answered many of these questions, and hopefully maybe we can find a way to put these in the chat in Slack, if that would be of interest. And okay, I will stop talking. And Jeff, if you want to wrap anything up or share anything else.
No, thanks. Thank you for the demo, Ann. And if folks have any other questions, I did put into the chat an email that you can send questions to. It's linkeddata@oclc.org. That will send it to myself, Ann, and some of our other linked data product colleagues. So if you do have any questions about what you've seen or outside questions about linked data, certainly feel free to let us know. One thing we will be talking more about later this year is the BibFrame editor that we're developing right now. We're going to be starting a development partnership program with it later this fall. And just to share some highlights, and we'll be talking more about this later this calendar year. It will work seamlessly back and forth with WorldCat. So any record that is in WorldCat right now as MARC will be searchable, viewable, editable as BibFrame in the BibFrame editor. And any data that's natively created in the BibFrame editor will be pushed back to WorldCat and then editable in a MARC format if that's sort of how you're working. The idea behind that is it can help with libraries who might be in a consortia. If a single library wants to migrate to BibFrame, it doesn't impact the ability to share data across the rest of the consortia. Or alternatively, if you're at a library where you'd like to sort of stagger your adoption of BibFrame, you can sort of allow or train and then have a couple of catalogers in a cohort, let's say, convert over to creating data at BibFrame, but have the rest of your cataloging staff still be working in MARC and not have not compromise the ability for you to manage your bibliographic data. And the other thing is to mention about the BibFrame editor is that it will have all Meridian functionality baked into it. So all the entity creation, connection building that Anne showed in Meridian today will be included as part of the BibFrame editor. So you could have sort of a one-stop shop for both doing bibliographic data creation or management in BibFrame, as well as sort of authoritative entity management, if you will, for lack of a better term, within the WorldCat Entities Knowledge Graph. So again, more on that here in the near future. But again, thank you for everyone who took the time to join us over the lunch hour today, or potentially a breakfast hour, I guess, if you're on the West Coast, late breakfast hour if you're on the West Coast. And again, thanks so much. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.